It's a Matt KC video. So it's probably gonna be good. I don't know if I've watched one of his videos on stream before. I know I've watched his videos in the past, like the, what is it? The Lego Island videos. But I don't know if I've ever watched a video on stream. Anyway, let's check it out. Ooh, PIA.
Grand Theft Auto has had a number of landmark entries in the series,
It has.
but none of them command quite as much widespread respect as San Andreas.
Yeah, really.
Over the course of 3 entries, Rockstar refined and ultimately perfected the PS2 era of GTA games.
PS2 era shows the Xbox copies. Yes, you are. Yes, true.
Producing what many consider to be one of the greatest games of all time. Most indicative of this is how much people are still playing it over 20 years later. So much so that when the most recent version of Windows 11, version 24H2, caused San Andreas to subtly break, it quickly caught people's attention. For the most part, the game still ran and played as normal, but the Skimmer seaplane was completely missing.
What?
It wasn't in its usual spawn point and couldn't be spawned in with mods. But every other vehicle was still fine, as was the rest of the game. How could a mere Windows update break a game whose code hadn't changed in 20 years?
Is it still spawning, but it's not rendering? Well, I guess people would know exactly where it was, so they wouldn't be able to... What? That's such a subtle bug.
And in such a random, subtle way.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it right after a message from our sponsor.
Wow.
If you're in need of a VPN, I highly recommend private internet access. You may have noticed that websites are often tailored for your location.
They
This
are.
is because your IP address gives them a rough idea of where you are. Occasionally this can be useful, but it can also cause you a lot of problems. We've all seen messages like this before. Some video we want to watch is not available in our country. This is a tactic that I like to call racism, but we're
True, brother. Very true. You can very easily avoid these messages by just you know, finding other sites that they might be located on. I'm not going to tell you where, but you can find them.
Look, with private internet access, you can change your IP address so the internet thinks you're somewhere else. Now you can watch that pesky video, no problem. Some countries feel the need to censor things for your sensitive eyes and ears, but show them you're hardcore by using private internet access. By relaying your traffic through a country that isn't a nanny state, you can regain full access to the internet just as God intended. And sometimes you just need a little bit of protection. You might need to use an unsecured website on a public Wi-Fi with no encryption. You might be in a situation where it's legitimately unsafe for your government, school, or whatever to see what sites you visit. Private internet access can give you that extra layer of encryption you need to keep your online activity private, with a strict no-logs policy that has been tested by both independent auditors and the legal system. I use private internet access because it's affordable, has a proven track record when it comes to privacy, and has very good native support for Linux, which, if you know Linux, you know can be pretty rare. And right now, if you head over to piavpn.com/
Sorry, I forgot he does Linux stuff. Sorry, I just like, fuck, that just came out of nowhere. Whenever someone mentions Linux, my brain just like, my brain freezes for a moment when I forget they actually do anything with it.
Matt KC, you can get 83% off, plus 4 months free. That's only $2.03 per month.
Especially in a video about Windows.
Money-back guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Check out private internet access today to get the most out of your internet connection. And now,
no, I
back
didn't
to
actually.
GTA. This story comes from Silent, creator of the Silent Patch, a comprehensive mod pack addressing a wide range of issues affecting this era of GTA games. Almost immediately after the 24H2 update, comments started appearing on Silent Patch's GTA forums thread and GitHub issue tracker about the Skimmer inexplicably not showing up, many of them mentioning that it had started after updating Windows. If this had only happened to one person, Silent probably would have dismissed it as an isolated incident with more at play than a mere Windows update. But the comments were so persistent that he decided to investigate. Silent, still holding out on Windows 10, couldn't reproduce the issue on his machine or on his work machine, which was on an earlier version of Windows 11. On both systems, the Skimmer spawned in its normal place, and he was able to use a script to spawn one in and teleport into it. But he asked around a few people who had upgraded to the latest Windows, and all of them were able to reproduce the missing Skimmer problem. Silent finally installed 24H2 in a virtual machine, and sure enough, the Skimmer wasn't there. At this point, it seemed clear there was something happening with this update. But what could it possibly be? It was time to dive in and find out.
Yeah, that's confusing.
He used that same script to spawn a skimmer and teleport inside, at which point he was suddenly shot roughly 1 quadrillion light years into the sky. Well, there is your problem. Shortly after this, the game...
Is it some sort of floating point calculation?
Would lock up. So now he definitely knew something was going severely wrong.
Like, it's clearly spawning the skimmer, but it's spawning out of bounds.
Wrong, but it was impossible to know at this point if it was a bug with the game or a bug with the new version of Windows. But the fact that the game froze did give him a starting point. He could see what code it was stuck in and work backwards from there. Specifically, it froze in a function called cPlane pre-render, where a while loop tries to make sure the angle of the plane's rotor blade is between 0 and 360 degrees. The angle is calculated from the rotor blade's speed, which was... yeah, that. A number so big that a loop subtracting from the angle until it was less than 6.28 would inevitably take a very long time.
Right.
But where did this massive rotor speed value come from? Well, the speed is calculated from various numbers, one of which happens to be proportional to the plane's altitude. So that solves the freeze at least. The plane being several light years above ground caused a domino effect that eventually resulted in the game effectively soft-locking. But why was the plane spawning in so high? Well, the script he was using was able to make the vehicle spawn in at specific coordinates, so from there he could follow the code and see what was going wrong. The function that spawns cars, called cCarControl create car for script, doesn't actually put the vehicle exactly where you specify. The exact Z position, which in this game is the up and down axis, is recalculated using things like gravity, wheel suspension, and the 3D model's bounding box. This seemed like a good place to start looking. Taking a quick peek at the bounding box, Silent confirmed its Z value was indeed absurdly huge. But how? If this was run-of-the-mill memory corruption, it probably would have corrupted the whole bounding box, not just the Z value. There had to be something very specific going wrong.
Is it some, like, weird OpenGL thing? Or, like, DirectX change?
Wrong. Silent traced the bounding box right back to the moment it gets read in from the disk and found that, at first, everything was fine. So it wasn't a problem inherent with the model data or how it was being imported. Eventually Silent tracked down the corruption to set up suspension lines, a function that adjusts a model's bounding box based on, well, a vehicle's suspension. The values used for suspension are in files called handling.cfg and vehicles.ide. The skimmer's entry in handling.cfg looked no different than any other, but then he noticed something peculiar in vehicles.ide. The skimmer was missing a few values. Now, to be clear, there are other vehicles missing these values too, but they were all marked as boats. The skimmer was the only one of these marked as a plane. As it turns out, these 4 missing numbers were all parameters for a vehicle's wheels, parameters that are also used when calculating a vehicle's suspension.
Right, and the seaplane doesn't have wheels, so it makes sense that it wouldn't have that.
Boats don't need them because boats don't have wheels, but planes do, and Silent wondered if this was the big problem.
Does a seaplane have wheels, though? Planes do, but does that plane have them? I would assume it doesn't.
Indeed, just adding 4 reasonable numbers to the entry made the skimmer work perfectly again. For an incredibly bizarre problem, the solution. But in San Andreas, for whatever reason, they changed the vehicle type to a plane, and presumably forgot that planes needed those extra 4 numbers.
But why did it become a problem now, then?
To be fair, this would have been an easy mistake to make, because, I mean, the skimmer seemed to work fine, and continued to work fine for the next 20 years. But that in itself is a good question. Why wasn't this ever an issue before? Why did it only stop working now? Well, it all comes down to one of our favorite programming supervillains, uninitialized variables. Essentially, in C and C++...
Oh! My guess is the Windows update probably changed how uninitialized variables were being handled. And the boat calculation just doesn't worry about suspension, but planes do. So it was grabbing whatever the new uninitialized variables were going to be. That's what I think it's going to be.
When you declare a variable but don't set it to anything, its value is effectively random.
Yeah.
Technically, whatever was in that region of memory before, but under normal circumstances we have no idea what that is, so it may as well be random. When GTA loads in its vehicle data, in a function called loadVehicleObject, it doesn't do any checks to determine whether certain values have actually been set. It just assumes the data loaded from the file is valid and...
This is when did San Andreas come out? What year was this? Because that makes sense. 2004. Yeah, okay. That is how you would write a 21-year-old video game.
And uses those values no matter what. Since the boat code never touches those wheel values, they never end up causing a problem. But since the plain code does, being a random number can absolutely screw up the physics. So really, the reason this never caused a problem before was pure luck. For the past 20 years, these uninitialized values have just happened to be valid numbers that didn't cause the game any problems. It was only with Windows 11 24H2 that, for whatever reason, they suddenly did. Silent's permanent fix was simple. Just initialize those variables to reasonable defaults so that if a vehicle entry doesn't set them, they won't be anything crazy.
Sure.
This definitively fixes the issue, eliminating any problem that could conceivably be caused by missing values from vehicles.ide. But despite fixing the problem, there was still one question Silent wanted an answer to. He wanted to know exactly what changed in 24H2 to trigger this bug after all this time. In particular, he wanted to know if this was some kind of fault in Windows 11 or just an unfortunate coincidence. The first thing Silent did was compare the values of these uninitialized variables both before and after the update. After the update, they were corrupted garbage values as we know, but before the update, the value was 0.7, the same.
With it being such a normal value, I wonder where this is coming from. Because this feels like intentionally garbled data.
Number used for the actual wheel states of several other vehicles,
and
the one Silent had chosen as the default to fall back to. But this seemed a little too perfect. How is it unwittingly arriving at exactly the right answer? To see when and why local variables change, we have to take a look at the stack, which is where local variable data is stored. Anytime a new function starts, it acquires a certain amount of stack space, and then relinquishes it just before it ends. But the data doesn't disappear when that stack space is released, it just gets marked as unused and therefore safe for other functions to overwrite with their own data.
Right.
If no other code touches that part of memory, it will remain exactly the same as it was before. If we zoom out, here's the code that calls loadVehicleObject. It's part of a bigger function that reads the config files in line by line using fgetS. fgetS is a standard C function, but inevitably the Windows implementation of it will make some internal Windows system calls. Indeed, before the 24H2 update, none of the code in the fgetS implementation happens to touch these uninitialized variables. It gets close, literally the set of bytes immediately afterwards are changed.
For my conspiracy theory, Rockstar paid them to bring the remaining players to GTA 5. So actually, on that note, have you ever seen like, San Andreas multiplayer? And have you seen like the state that like it was in, I guess, before like I think like the official thing they were running, like the semi-official thing they were running, like shut down now. But like before it shut down, it like modern San Andreas multiplayer was basically GTA 5 multiplayer. Yeah, okay, there's like other servers running now, but like the guys who are running the main servers, they shut it down. But yeah, like San Andreas multiplayer actually kind of got crazy.
But not the ones that matter, so it just manages to get off scot-free. In practice, what this means is when the game loads in the set of bytes immediately afterwards are changed, but not the ones that matter, so it just manages to get off scot-free.
Wait, so what's your bet this was intentional, and they've just been relying on values not being changed all of this time?
In practice, what this means is when the game loads in the Skimmer, the values just happen to be set to the completely valid values of the last vehicle it loaded, in this case the Top Fun van. This is why the numbers...
So if the first vehicle loaded was a Skimmer, like if you replaced every single vehicle with a Skimmer, I assume the game would have broken already.
Were surprisingly valid. But in the 24H2 update, Microsoft slightly altered some of these internal Windows system calls in a way that the new code ended up using slightly more of the stack than the old code. While before, these values just managed to stick around with a close shave, they were now being completely overwritten and inadvertently becoming the Skimmer's new wheel parameters. Through this, Silent determined that no, this was not a fault in Windows. While undoubtedly a shame, when a function releases stack space, it's free real estate. By no means should code rely on being lucky enough that its uninitialized variables are valid numbers, and it was entirely Rockstar's fault that it did. To be fair, uninitialized variables like this are a common mistake. Viewers of this channel will probably know about LEGO Island's exit glitch. This is yet another bug where an uninitialized variable is a major contributing factor, and once again, the problem only rears its head on newer versions of Windows. There are also other more benign examples throughout the Grand Theft Auto series. In Vice City, the color for the money pickup text also happens to be uninitialized, and this would manifest in different ways on different platforms. On PS2, the color happened to be filled by the object's this pointer, making it a random but non-changing color. Meanwhile, on PC, it ended up being some garbage value that changed constantly, leading to the text color randomly flickering. A lot of people assumed that each pickup having its own unique color was a feature that happened to be broken on PC, but nope, it was actually broken both times. It just happened to present differently on different platforms. But that raised one last question about San Andreas' Skimmer seaplane bug. San Andreas was...
Strim? Come back, Strim. Hello? Hello? We love disconnections. They are my favorite. Yeah. We're back. I think we should be back now. Yes. Okay.
It was actually broken both times. It just happened to present differently on different platforms. But that raised one last question about San Andreas' Skimmer seaplane bug. San Andreas was not just a Windows game. It was also on Xbox and PS2, and throughout the years it was re-released on macOS, iOS, Android, Windows Phone, Fire OS, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and of course remastered for even more platforms just a few years ago. Silent found it hard to believe that across all of those re-releases, none of them ever triggered this bug. And indeed, he didn't have to dig far to discover that the original Xbox version back in 2005 did fix this bug, in basically the same way he did by initializing those variables to a reasonable number. The Xbox branch also happens to be the basis for most of the later ports, including some re-releases on PC. So no, this is not a bug that you'll encounter on most versions of the game, only if you happen to be using a version that Rockstar never patched. For those, it is, as it often is,
do you know what the release schedule of Cosmic is going to be? Oh, the release schedule of Cosmic is going to be like your GNOME. My understanding is going to be more of like a rolling update. I don't know if it's going to stabilize over the years, but initially, I think it's just going to kind of work as it was already working during the alpha and beta, where they just release a new version every month or so. And that makes sense whilst things are like still very much a work in progress.
Up to the community to fix, and Silent will be including his fix in the next version of Silent Patch. But if you're encountering this bug and want it fixed right now, all you have to do is any text editor to add those missing values, and everything will just work. Issues like this are always fascinating. It really highlights how hard and impressive it is for Windows to maintain a decent level of backwards compatibility. No matter how innocuous a change may seem to be, you could easily end up inadvertently triggering a bug in someone else's code. I imagine Microsoft sometimes feels like they're walking on eggshells trying to keep everything working, and that every now and then they have to decide whether it's worth breaking one thing to improve something else. Thankfully, through modding, we can keep stuff running even when it does break. Special thanks to Silent for consulting and providing footage for this video.
I wonder if the game ever broke in similar ways under Proton. Oh, we DC'd again. God fucking damn it. Come on, we were good for the past 2 hours. Come on. Good for the past 2 or so hours, then it's like, nah, you wanna have 2 DCs in a row? Go fuck yourself.
He actually wrote a blog post about this bug earlier in the year that goes into even more technical detail. I'll link it in the description if you're interested. The blog post even got the attention of Microsoft veteran Raymond Chen, who just a few days ago wrote his own blog post about what prompted the change in Windows that ended up triggering this bug.
Wait, what? Wait, this was such a big thing that it got an official Microsoft blog post?
I'll link it in the description if you're interested. The blog post even got the attention of Microsoft veteran Raymond Chen, who just a few days ago wrote his own blog post about what prompted the change in Windows that ended up triggering this bug. I'll link that in the description as well. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye guys.
Can you barbecue with nothing but sunlight? Well, yesterday in Australia, we probably fucking could. That was fun. That was fun. Raymond does post about random fun insights. Ah, I see, I see. Yeah, like, when you're relying on... Well, this is why it's so important to not rely on, like, undefined values, on weird memory behavior. Like, if you want a computer to do something, you need to specify the exact thing you want it to do. For you asked about video games, but you forgot that we're talking about first communities to use MP4, MKV, and... Oh, no, I'm well aware that, like, early anime piracy had a lot of shit going on. But I also know that a lot of people also were, like, distributing around, like, very badly copied VHS tapes. Like, obviously, once digital formats became, like, an easier thing to use, probably most people swapped to it as quickly as possible. But, yeah. Like, the rare things you actually have. Did I like this video? No, this is a good video. I like this. Like, one movie is 20 megabytes. I don't know why I wasn't subbed to Matt already. I've watched a bunch of his stuff before.